Today's topic is Davar Charif. Davar Charif means a sharp food. Well, Be'ez Hashem covers raw. Once you cook the onion, if you cook the onion, it no longer has a din of Davar Charif. To put it to explain an example, if you cook the onion in a part of a pot, now it's cooked. We understand what a cooked onion is. You have in the chicken soup, you have cooked onions. It's not sharp at all. You cook the onion or you saute the onion. It's not sharp anymore. Then you went and you took this cooked onion and you moved on into whatever cases you want to discuss. You cooked it in a fleshiga pot. It no longer has a status of Davar Charif. It's like a regular food. So Davar Charif has to be most of the pot, has to be the Davar Charif, all the pot, most of the pot are really spicy. And onions, it has to be before you cook the onions, to be considered a Davar Charif. The same idea you find, Legabe Aleph, Zaysim, in Hilchas Pesach, Simin, Taf Mem Zayin, the Shulchan Aruch speaks about a Davar Charif of olives, a Davar Charif, and the Mishnah Berurah says that if you put water on the olives, it no longer has a status of Davar Charif. So it's negated to all, whatever the list is on the list of Davar Charif, these different things lose its status of Davar Charif. Yaakov mentioned before, garlic would maybe be such a thing also if you cook it. Any different items that you switch, that you cook, and it takes away the Davar Charif, it's no longer Davar Charif, it doesn't have that halach anymore. Now that we're kaiveya, what is a Davar Charif? Now we'll try to go into the Scheiner. What does Davar Charif cost for us? And this is very practical, very negeya, in everybody's kitchen. We'll start first with a hot Davar Charif, not a hot pepper, but literally hot, and then we'll go to cold. You have an onion. You cook an onion in a fleshiga pot. So really, if you cook a potato in a fleshiga pot, you cook a potato in a fleshiga pot, which is a ben yoimai, meaning to say it was used within the past 24 hours for fleshiks, and you cook potatoes inside. What is the halacha with these potatoes that you cooked in this fleshiga pot ben yoimai, which is called nat bar nat? The fleshiga flavor went into the pot. Now from this pot, it's going into the potato. It's not bar nat. What is the halacha with these potatoes? It's a machloikis machaber ramah. The machaber holds you could use these potatoes, you could put cheese, butter into the potatoes. You could use it for milchiks. The ramah says, l'tchatchila, in such a case, not bar nat, one should not use these potatoes together with milchiks. Obviously, after you're done the potatoes, you can move on to milchiks, but don't eat it with milchiks. So that's a case in a regular food cooked in a pot. That's a ben yoimai, a fleshiga pot that you use within 24 hours. This is all regular food. However, if you cook in a pot, a Davar Charif, you cook the onions in this pot, this fleshiga pot. Says the Ramah, Siman Tzadik Hey Beis, also the Lashon you can follow inside. Avalam hoya Davar Charif, kegoyin shebishlu dvaram charifim akli shal basar, afilu eine ben yoimai, which means up until now we saw that this din of nat bar nat is only when it's a ben yoimai. However, if you cook onions in a fleshiga pot, it doesn't make a difference even if you didn't use this fleshiga pot for days. If you cook onions in this pot, this fleshiga pot, the onions are fleshiks. The onions are fleshiks. We see two chumras over here. Two chumras of Davar Charif over nat bar nat, which means a Davar Charif, you're cooking an onion in a pot over cooking potatoes. Again, this is very negay. You're cooking potatoes in a fleshiga pot. These two chumras. First of all, even if the pot is a Eide ben yoimai, it's still the onions become fleshiks, and va'oid, it's fleshiks not only like the Ramah says midin chumra l'tchatchila, it's also like the Ramah says clearly afilu b'diavad. Why is it like that? explains the shachs you've caught in Zion very clearly. Two things happen with the onions. First of all, the onions, the Davar Charif, the onions cause the Eine ben Yoimai to become a ben Yoimai. That's one did. Makes the Eine ben Yoimai to ben Yoimai. So therefore, even if you're using a fleishiga pot that's a few days, you didn't use it in a few days, the onions make it into ben Yoimai. But still, even though it's a ben Yoimai, you didn't gain everything yet, because the flavor, the fleishiga flavor went into the pot and now has to go into the onion. So that's not barnat. It's a very weak transfer, and really, why should it be asa b'diavad? The teretz is, Davar Charif causes as if the belias are be'en, which means instead of the belias fleishiks going into the pot and from the pot going into the onion, it's as if the belias of the pot are literally now in the onion. So the halacha is very clearly, if you cook onions, this is without the svaris, you cook onions in a fleishiga pot, it does not make a difference if the pot is a ben yoimei, ain't a ben yoimei, the onions are fleishiks, and you cannot eat these onions together with milchiks.
If I cut the onion with a milk knife and then bring the fleishik into that pot.
Whoa. So first of all, we spoke about hot. We're going to get to cold about the knife right now. But you're already jumping to another case that you caught with the knife the onion and then you moved on. We'll see if we're going to get to it tonight. If not, it's going to have to be in a part two. That's a big shail in the Hachaim. But first, well, you brought up very well. What's about a knife? That's the next point. Shkoyach very well brought up about a knife. So in a hot, if you cook onions in a pot, the onions become fleishiks. Bedin Davar Charif, even though it's a Eine ben Yoimai.
I think it might be machlokes if we say both chumras is a Beis Meir, right? We say if you cook onions, if we don't say both chumras unless by tonight only. No, I think it's a shaila.
You're saying in what type of in which Davar Charif?
A Davar Charif. If we don't say both chumras that it's mashma bein, that it makes like it's that it's mashma l'shvach and that it's mashma bein.
You mean not like the Taz and the Shach?
Do they say it by everything or just by tonight? It could be that
they say it in a few cases, because there's one case which the Ramah is speaking about. The truth is, the Ramah is just says him regularly. You're going shabish ledvarim charifim bakli, stam Davar Charif. So he's saying, I have to be careful on what type of Davar Charif. We're going to see there's a bunch of different cases. So Atkan we spoke about something hot. What's about something cold? If let's say you cut an onion with a fleishiga knife. So over there as well, this is already a machaber. And the Machaber says, Sinoin, radishes, silka, beets, those are the cases where Yitaka spells out. Shechatchem, besakan shalbas, if you want to follow inside, it's tzadik vav aleph. You cut a knife, a radish, sinoin, silka, let's focus on an onion, it makes it a little easier. You cut an onion with a fleishiga knife, and the Shulchan Aruch says, v'yesh oimrim, even if the knife is a Eine ben Yoimai, which means you didn't cut hot meat today. Cut a while back, it's a fleishiga knife, is the halacha aser lechlam b'chalav. You're now going to eat this onion together with milchiks. Just like we saw, if you cook it in a fleishiga pot, so too when you cut an onion with a fleishiga knife, the onion becomes fleishiks as well. And there are two factors over here that make the onion fleishiks, just like we mentioned before with the pot. Number one, that the onion, that it's a Davar Charif, makes the knife from an Eine ben Yoimai to a ben Yoimai. That's number one. It becomes a ben Yoimai. But that's not enough, because l'chayr should be not barnat. The fleishiks, the blias to go into the knife, to go into the onion. So the din is duchke de sakina. By pushing the knife through the onion, duchke de sakina is as if the blias are be'en, the fleishiga blias in the knife, and therefore those fleishiga blias make the onion fleishiks. So once again, we have two parts over here. First of all, the Davar Charif makes the Eine ben Yoimai to ben Yoimai, and the Davar Charif also makes the ben yoimoy not being a nat bar nat, but rather it's be'en, and therefore the onion is fleishiks.
Can we say that the duchka to sakina is enough to work the other way around also and make a non-fleshik knife now become fleshik?
Oh, very good, Akiva. You're on the drive over here. This is the power from the Davar Shavua. Very good, very mamish. We're going to get to that. The emes is shkoyach for bringing it up, because we're going to get to that momentarily. Very good point. I'll say over the Shiloh, so we'll get to it right away. Talking about duchke de sakina, what does the Olam say if you put in a fork into chrein? Chrein is also, chrein is a davar. If you put a fork into chrein, a fleishig fork into chrein, does the chrein become fleishiks? Why avada nisht? Oh, so l'chayr it's partial the way you're saying there's no dochka. Yeah, good point. But what happens in the beginning when it's packed? In the beginning it's stuffed.
You can put your finger in also.
In the beginning when the
Put your finger into a side.
no, I'm talking about chrein. The chrein you use Shabbos with your fish.
Try to put your finger into a snug. Let's see what happens.
The only tzad that I would think maybe it is duchke the sakina, maybe, or the fork, maybe is in the beginning when you buy it and it's like packed, solid packed. Yesh lo stop. Like you're saying it's pashanat. Okay. I brought it up as a shiloh for them to think about.
Also the shiloh, but a fork or length, if it has the dafka sakina or a fork.
Fork, knife, and some even want to say a spoon. I saw interesting, the Heintige want to say the same shiloh will be by a pickle. If you put a fork, a fleishig fork into a pickle jar, into the pickle, so you're saying it's maybe a shiloh, but you have pashtas duchke the sakina of the fork, the fleishig fork into the pickle, and maybe the pickle is now fleishiks. Someone brought up a shiloh before, very interesting. If you poke it into the pickle and then you lose that pickle, so then all the pickles are a shiloh. No, otherwise you take out that pickle with a fleishig fork, so just that pickle is fleishiks. You can't put it into milchig salad. But if not, we'll get to a little bit of bittul also, but the shiloh is if you put a fork into the pickle, that much should be a shiloh that the pickle becomes fleishy. You can't put it into a milchig salad. One more pointer in Davar Charif, which is ganz pashat, but the Shulchan Aruch speaks it out. Even though we see that Davar Charif causes that a Eine ben yoimoy should turn into a ben yoimoy, that's what we're busy with right now, that the Eine ben yoimoy becomes a ben yoimoy. But what happens, let's take a mashal. You had a fleishig pot, you cooked onions in the pot, and the pot now became a ben yoimoy. What happens if 2 days later you cook potatoes inside that pot? Is that considered ben yoimoy or not? Again, you cooked onions in the fleishig pots, and now today you cooked it, it's a ben yoimoy. 2 days later you cooked in that pot, you cooked potatoes. Is it considered that you're cooking potatoes in a pot of a ben yoimoy, or it's a ben yoimoy? So that the Ramah and Simon Kuf Chaf Beis speaks it out. So I'm also allowed to speak it out. Could be it's pashit.
2 days later, why?
Whatever, after May slice of the onions.
Why should it be?
So the Ramah speaks out that even though the onions causes, the Davar Charif causes something to be from an Eine ben yoimoy to ben yoimoy, but it's only for a ben yoimoy b'shas ma'isa. Ramah speaks it out clearly in Kuf Chaf Beis Yif Gimel. But avada the Davar Charif, after whatever it accomplished, whether you cut in the knife or anything, it's only for a ben yoimoy b'shas ma'isa. Lashon Ramah avalim hoya isa Davar Charif v'achikach shor hakadeira me'is la'is ubishlei by heta she'ina charif mutter.
You have to wait 6 hours?
Very good. Reb Shlomo Yosef, 6 hours we're going to get to soon. First we have to shtel avek the Chumra, and then we'll get to 6 hours. That's a good shayla taka. There's no Shulchan Aruch about it, but we're going to get to it. Now, lav dafka a knife, who had in a grinder. Let's say you have a fleishig grinder. Don't ask me how the grinder became fleishiks. You put hot meat through it, chicken soup, it's a fleishig grinder. And lamaisa you put onions through it. So you have duchke de sakina, and even if it's a Eine ben yoimoy, the chicken soup went through that grinder a month ago, still the halacha is that these onions become fleishiks. That's klar. It's a Ramah Tzadikei Beis. Oishadochu tavlim b'madach shabasa becomes fleishiks, and the same halacha is brought also in Hilchas Pesach. But now we're going to come back to what Akiva mentioned before. What happens the other way around? Which means up until now we spoke that the onion pulls out the fleshig of flavor, even if it's a Eine Ben Yoimai, and even if it's worse than Nat Bar Nat. It literally takes out. But what's about the other way around? Does the onion put the flavor in? Where's it in Geya? The onion's parv, and I'm not going to go into a case of an onion that became fleishiks. That's a shayla I'm not talking about. A very simple case that the Mishnah Berurah speaks about in Tafnun Aleph Sifkat and Pei Vav. The Mishnah Berurah speaks about, obviously in Hilchas Pesach, if it's chametz stick, and how does a grinder become chametz stick? He says you were grinding onions, any Davar Charif, and while grinding the Davar Charif, some crumbs of challah went through. Is the halacha, the Davar Charif, just like it pulls out from the knife, it pulls out from the grinder, so too does it put in as well. So Mamela makes the grinder chametz stick, and negeilin yanenu. If you have a power of a grinder, blender, fruit processor, and a little bit of fleishiks got caught in, even if it's not hot, the onion, the Davar Charif of the onion pulls in the meat, the fleishiks, and it'll make it fleishiks. So what we have over here so far is like this. First of all, we made it clear that a Davar Charif, you have to have the whole pot Charif, you have to have most of the pot, very spicy. The Chumra of Davar Charif applies by hot onions cooked in a pot. It's by cold, with a knife. It's by a blender. And then we see that a Davar Charif, not only does it pull out a taste from the pot, so too does it put in as well. Another Chumra by Davar Charif, the halach is, it's in Hilchas Taruvas Siman Kuf Hey Siv Aleph. I think it's in this Shulchan Aruch, yeah. Iser Shenishra Heter is the halacha. If you have an example of Iser that's soaked in Heter, would be either Iser or even a case of you have meat soaked in milk. So the halacha is if it's for 24 hours, it has the halacha of kavish k'mavushal. It's like it's cooked. The same too is also if you have something treif soaked in something not treif, it's k'mavushal. It doesn't help just to rinse it off. The halacha of kavish k'mavushal, it has to soak for 24 hours. However, the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber is mamshach. The Shulchan Aruch says that if it comes to a Davar Charif, the imu kavish b'toich tzir, salt water, oichaimitz, vinegar, im shah, this is the lashon, shah kadeshi yitnenu al oil, a lot less than 24 hours. If it was sitting in the water, in the vinegar, for the time to put it on the fire, v'yarsiach, and it'll get hot and it'll start cooking, 20 minutes or whatever, that's enough to make it the Isser Beheter to transfer over. So here once again you find the concept of Davar Charif, that even though Kavish Mavushal you need 24 hours for something to soak to be considered Mavushal, by Davar Charif it happens very quickly. Where is this Lamaisa, this Kavish Mavushal Davar Charif that happens quickly? Pesach, before Pesach we kasha the bechers. Why do we kasha our bechers before Pesach?
It's cold.
It's cold. The chal that touches. So what's the problem? You rinse it off. What'd you say? First of all, you use the becher in the morning. Then you use it in the afternoon. You rinse it for Avdolah because it's sat in for 24 hours. I hear kavish k'mavushal. I think leichter than that. If you have schnapps, scotch, whiskey is a Davar Charif, and it is chametz. So mamela kavish k'mavushal, if it sits in your becher for a little bit already, it's a shayla. It's problematic. You have to kasher it. Now, even if you have kosher a Pesach schnapps whiskey, it's still a problem because if you have some crumbs inside, just like we mentioned before, that the Davar Charif pulls in the chametz, the crumbs by a grinder, so too over here there's a pull in, the Davar Charif pulls in those crumbs and it makes it chametz stick. So this is another chumra by Davar Charif. another, so to speak, Chaymer by Davar Charif. These are halacha, the Olam spoke about a little bit before, that Isser Beheter is Batal B'Shishim. However, this is in Hilchas, in Taruvas Sadik Ches, Zokte Ramah, even though it's Batal B'Shishim, Avol em Noisim Tam Ba'isa Gedeira, let's say what you put in puts in Tam. V'u Asim Etzad Atzmai, which is an important halacha, means that the Isser it's not an onion that got a bliya shal Isser. It itself has to be Aser. Afilu be'eluf loy batal, doesn't become batal. Kolzman, you have the taste. In other words, it doesn't become batal be'eluf, but if let's say you have 1,000 and you don't taste it, b'chlal, it becomes batal. What is the case that you don't say bittul Isser b'shishim? Zogt ulachein melech v'tavlin, salt and spices midvorim da avidi l'taima, and memela doesn't become batal. Right away, the Taz explains that it's only talking about something that's spicy, as opposed to something very tasty, shum and fat, that will become batal b'shishim. So here, once again, we find that even though there's a concept of bittul b'shishim, when it's a davar charif, it doesn't become batal. I feel the eluf loy batal. Now, we can't just speak about chumras the whole time. Everything is that davar charif is chaymer, like we saw that even ein ben yoymoi, and even it doesn't have the din of nat bar nat. All the dinim, all chumras, it's not batal b'shishim. There's a chiddush of the Chacham Tzvi, which is brought in the Piskei Tshuva, Siman Kuf Chav Beis. The Chacham Tzvi says that even though davar charif, like we saw before, brings back an Ein ben Yoimai and it makes it a ben Yoimai, however, after 12 months, it's done. He says it only legabe Pesach, so don't use it across the board. He's mesupik maybe other places, but he says, I'm not going to go into the reason why he says only Pesach, but only Pesach if something is let's say you use a davar charif on a chametz keli. So really, we're machmer by chametz even by ein ben yoimai, which is based on tam lofgam. We're makbid by chametz ein ben yoimai. We're makbid as opposed to other places. We're makbid, but even though we're makbid on the ein ben yoimai, 12 months we're not makbid, and even a davar charif doesn't bring it back to ben yoimai. So this is one makom where you find, even though davar charif has a lot of chumra, there is area of leniency after 12 months. One more din, and take right afterwards. One more din is what Reb Shlomo Yosef mentioned before, is what's about, we see davar charif is unbelievable. The davar charif makes you cook onions in a fleishiga pot, even if the pot is a eine ben yoimai, still the onions are fleishiks, you're not allowed to eat it with milchiks. How fleishiks is it? Is it fleishiks that you have to wait 6 hours afterwards? So the Ramah, this is the Ramah in Pei Tes Sif Gimel. The Ramah says, in the case of nat bar nat, the Ramah says if you cook potatoes in a fleishiga pot, says the Ramah, you don't have to wait 6 hours. You cook potatoes in a fleishiga pot, a ben yoima, you don't have to wait 6 hours. So the Shach says, what's the chiddush? Of course you don't have to wait 6 hours. It's barely fleishiks that you're almost even allowed to eat these potatoes with cheese. The Ramah's machmer, don't eat it with cheese. Of course you don't have to wait 6 hours. That's the Shach's shaila. And we heard the Shach's teretz is that if these be'en, and we heard a whole shir about it to explain the Shach. We're not going into the Shach. Reb Kiveger says that the chiddush of the Ramah is by davar charif. So Rabbi said this Reb Kiveger, that Reb Kiveger explains the chiddush of the Ramah is by davar charif. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait 6 hours. So even though we see that davar charif is something that when you cook onions in a pot, it becomes fleishiks. You cut an onion with a fleishiga knife. Even if the knife is fleishiks, it's a Edom and Yoime. You used it a few days ago. The onion is fleishiks. You put it through a grinder, it becomes fleishiks. However, it's only fleishiks that you're not allowed to eat it with milchiks. But to wait 6 hours, you don't have to wait. Just to leave off what we didn't cover yet, which is very important, hopefully Be'ez Hashem there'll be a part 2, but it's negated to discuss after this onion becomes fleishiks, which you're now allowed to eat with milchiks, even b'di'evid. What happens now with this onion and you continue on with a par of a knife? Does the knife become fleishiks? Also to discuss a cutting board, that's to be discussed. But the Davar Charif itself, as we saw, is a Chumra that even Eina ben Yoimai, but it's only fleishiks that the onion itself you're not allowed to eat with milchiks, but you don't have to wait 6 hours.